I am here in the Colorado delegation before it gets too crowded with Senator Bennet. Senator Bennet, you were the very first member of the United States Senate to publicly say that Joe Biden couldn't win the election. So tell me about how you're reflecting on that public statement and what it took to make that as a politician and where we are tonight.
I just thought once I was convinced that that's what the outcome was going to be, that we were going to lose in a landslide and that I think we were going to lose the House and the Senate, I thought it was important to be honest about that and say it. And all I was trying to do was suggest that we should have an open debate in the party about what we do. And now tonight, you know, it's almost staggering to think about what's happened. President Biden has done something no other president has ever done, making a decision to put the country in front of his own political interests, and this party has consolidated in a way that I don't think anybody would have predicted. I mean, think about the number of conventions you've been to and the drama and upset and competition and all that stuff, and we had to get a lot done in a short period of time to be coming out of this in the position that we're in. And the reason I raised it to begin with is that I really do believe that we face not just a political choice this November, we face a moral choice. And I, with my wife Susan, have raised 3 daughters. I used to be the superintendent of Denver Public Schools, working for kids whose parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. The outcome of this election really matters to them, and so I thought it was important to say something. I've been very proud about the way people have come together.
What do you say to the critics who said it should have been an open process rather than Kamala Harris basically being anointed into the position?
What's interesting is I don't think she was anointed. I think that it was an organic process that led to her selection. I mean, there wasn't anybody there, saying that this is who it has to be. I mean, obviously, President Biden endorsed her, but what I felt and what I sensed was an organic movement among the delegates to this convention and political leaders all across the country who said, yeah, we can have that kind of competitive process, but it's very likely to end up in the same place anyway. And do we have the time to really do that? You know, would we be better off putting our best foot forward with the vice president and getting after the competition with Donald Trump? And I think it turns out that the organic thing was right, and we've gotten to this point. We're in far better shape than I think we would have been had we had some other kind of process. And I'll also say this, I've never met Tim Walz and didn't know him and have not seen him give a speech until he gave the speech last night. And that was also very striking for me, that this process led to not just the selection of Kamala Harris, but the selection of Tim Walz, who I think is going to do an extraordinary job repairing an issue that the Democratic Party has had for a very long time, which is reaching out in a meaningful way to the middle of the country.
Vice President Harris is going to give the most important speech of her political career tonight. What does she have to do to be successful?
I think what she has to do to be successful is say to America that we'd like to have you join us in this effort, that we are facing a seismic choice here, that we can turn the page on the divisive, chaotic politics of Donald Trump, and that we can actually begin to rebuild a politics around the interests of our kids and our grandkids in the way that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama talked about it the other night. The values that Tim Walz talked about last night are no different than the values that Michelle Obama was raised with on the south side of Chicago. Those are the values that we were raised on, no matter where we come from in America. And And over a long time in our country's history, we expected to have political differences, contend with those political differences, and live out the values that are described now by, and I think that's what she has to do tonight, and I suspect she will. Look, this unity here means nothing if we can't reach people that are outside this hall and engage them in this election, and we've only got 75 or something like that days left to make it happen, and the race is razor thin. I was looking at the numbers today on the way in here.
Last question for you. You and Kamala Harris have a personal friendship, not just a professional political friendship. What do you want people to know about her from that personal friendship that they can't see on the public stage?
I mean, I guess what I would say is that here's what I think, there are 100 ways of being a U.S. Senator, and there are people who do that job and almost, never lift a finger to do anything. Kamala Harris is not one of those people. She studies very hard. She's very diligent. She pays attention. She's cordial to her colleagues. She listens to what other people have to say. And she's also not a shrinking flower at all. She's somebody who wants to be, she wants to have her voice heard, and we need to hear her voice. So that's one thing I would say. She was a member of the Intelligence Committee in which I served. We sat right next to each other. In fact, her promotion to vice president meant that I moved up one seat on the committee, and I've always sort of taken, I've taken pleasure in her promotion as a way of getting my own minimal advancement on that committee. I'm just kidding. But she has been that kind of person, great sense of humor, somebody who you'd just like to hang out with, and I think it's amazing that she's been able to ascend to where she's been able to ascend, but she's done it with an extraordinary sense of confidence that I think we're going to need going into this November election. And we should be confident in her leadership, and I hope she'll be confident in us. We're going to win this thing if we do the work we need to do.
Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, thanks for spending time with C-SPAN.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.